Yo everyone, Mercurial here. Today I'm gonna be going through this guide by Powder from Japan on which or like how to slam items and how to choose what composition to go for on 2-1. It's a pretty short guide, or not not really short. It's pretty long for being such a small subject, but yeah, not too long. So I'm gonna try to keep it like pretty short and just go through it pretty much. And if you enjoyed the guide, make sure to go into this link and you can support him by giving him a tip. And he will most likely be posting more guides in that case. But yeah, let's get into it. First, he's introduced himself. I mean, we already saw who he is. He's a beast. But yeah, let's get into it. The basics. The influence of items in this game is incredible. The compositions you can go with is determined by the materials that fall. I think everyone understands this, however, in many cases, the awareness is weak. I've talked about the first stage many times. The plan is mostly determined by the units and items that fall on the first stage what to play. Here I will go a little further to some from the aspects of items. For example, let's say that there's a rod, a recurve bow, and a glove falling at first stage. Well, let's leave the units aside. When these materials fall, how many game plans can you imagine? What will you slam and what composition will you close into in that case? Since there are three materials, there are three candidates for the finished item that can be made. And yeah, basically always you want to slam something unless you're full opening but that shouldn't really happen much. So yeah, let's see what you can make. Last Whisper with a rod as the extra component, Jewel Lotus or Gauntlet with the recurve bow, or Ginso with a glove. First, if you make the Last Whisper, basically it is not included in the candidates. If you make a Last Whisper, you will get closer to the AD composition, but the rod surplus feels bad. Also in this set, there is no 4-cost main carry that uses Last Whisper. Twitch is not very compatible with Last Whisper, and they also aim for the back. I don't know, but yeah, you don't really want Last Whisper since you want Rageblade Red buff on him. And Corki cannot be a single carry, like you need other carries. Also, there are only two 1-cost AD carries, so there are not many situations where you can make one. If you make a Last Whisper to scrap and win consecutively, you will only be able to get armor from the carousel, so not anything that you would want. And the items will often go. For this reason, 2-1 Last Whisper Slam is tough. Yeah, basically what it means is since like if you're gonna play it for anything, even for this it's not great, but if you're gonna play it, it's for quirky. But even for that, in that case, you will get a lot of like armor or like the chain or the belt or things that you don't really want in the scrap comp usually because you're looking for damage items mainly. So it can be very problematic with Last Whisper. Um, and you can just slam it and like loose streak into scrap, but yeah, probably better trying to win streak if you can. Next, two. This this is the dual gauntlet and the bow as the extra. Next two. This is also basically not a very good choice. What AP carries want first is an item that accelerates mana mana generation rather than a pure damage item. If you only give Morgana dual load gauntlet, it won't work very well. However, if there is one composition that justifies this item sum, it's Sorcerer. Why does Sorcerer not need a mana item? First of all, there is the existence of Nami, just putting her will accelerate everyone's mana. Therefore, there are times when you can survive without mana items in stage 4. Also, if you draw LeBlanc, you can't use mana items. Due to the skill, you don't need the mana items. Okay, I guess he thinks when you have LeBlanc, you have enough damage, so you don't really need to cast as much. Therefore, you can see a winning progression from Sorcerer. This slam is okay. Visionary and Dominator need quite a lot of mana items, therefore it's better to not do this item slam in the first place. If you there are also stories that if you do this progression with anything other than Sorcerer, you won't win much in the early game. And yeah, I think this point is a bit weird, considering like if you have a mana or if you have an AP start, you kind of want to go for this. But it's pretty true that you would much rather have a mana item, and probably with the JG you won't really have much success early game, and you're probably not going to do very well unless you have like a good opener to play into like something like Sorcerer, because then you really want the JG later. And yeah, if you can get a good opener with it, it's going to be nice. Then third, if you ignore the metas, this item slam should be the strongest, so making the Rage Blade and having the glove left over. In this case, in the case of one, make an AD item and have a rod left over. In the case of two, you don't need a mana item and just go for AP. Only in the case of three, after making Ginso, basic AD item, the remaining material will be gloves, leaning towards AD, which will be the most comfortable progression. With this set, you can look at IE and look at Twitch, or at Jeweled or Gunblade and look at Rebels more heavily. Ginso is also a very strong item in the early game, so you can aim for a winning progression. And yeah, I agree. Like, the basic thing to think about is, like, first of all, try to make something that's really strong early, which is Ginso in this case. Or it can be like something like Sunfire, something that's really good early game. And you also want to play into good compositions like Twitch or Rebels, so you have two choices. It's really nice if you don't limit your choices as much. And also, the remaining item should be very good for the comp you're trying, or the comp or comps that you're going for. So in this case, it's very good for Twitch and very good for Rebels. So it makes a lot of sense, and it's going to be the most common thing for each slam. The only other thing you could do is the JG, but yeah, usually if you have some kind of a spot for either Twitch or Rebels, this makes a lot more sense, I would say. Then let's get to the advanced section. High resolution for the strength of each composition. This is definitely an area where there's a big difference between a high and low elo. I think it means how much knowledge you have for each composition. This is a big difference when high and low elo, and when to go for each composition and what makes them good. When you make an item, the composition you can go with is decided. Therefore, it's necessary to first understand the strengths of each composition. First, I talked about scrap in the case of one, making less whisper. I think that scrap has been talked about by quite a lot of people, and it's somewhat well known, so I'll talk about it briefly. The strength of scrap is that you don't need to make any tank items. The main units are Echo and Quirky. Both are carries. Also, since the shield is given like crazy, a tank is not needed for the composition. Therefore, you just want to have damage items. Basically, weapons are taken at the carousel, so you don't want to start from a loss streak and get weapons from the carousel. Another reason why I do not recommend starting from a win streak is that it will be difficult to remove them. For this reason, it's weak if you make a tank item on a winning streak and progress. Yeah, like you will be stuck with these tank items, and it's not going to be very good later, even though you're like win streaking, because you have like minus items. Not very nice. Next, Sorcerer. Also, I would say one reason for this is that in general, Scrap don't really have a great early or mid game. So even if you somehow make like a really good scrap board and 5 streak, most likely you're gonna lose a bit stage 3. And then you're like not even winning that much, and you have bad items, which doesn't feel great. Next, Sorcerer, who was rampant in the previous patch. has the strength of not only the strength of the progression, but also the low item requirement. I randomly slammed AP items, made some strong items like Shiv in the early game, and even if I couldn't make mana items, I was still able to win in 4 steps. That was the biggest strength of Sorcerer. Therefore, this composition is strong in the move of slamming items carelessly from the winning progression. Then, if I completed a level 8 board in 4 steps, I was guaranteed to be in top 4. It was also attractive that there was plenty of potential for first place, such as Blanc or Swain 3. On the other hand, even if I made the ideal items from a losing start and played Sorcerer, it's not as strong as I thought it would be. Well, I might be able to get in top 4, but since the progression doesn't take advantage of the strength of the composition, it will be settle at a certain rank relatively. Yeah, basically, you need to understand the strength and weaknesses of your comp. So for Scrap, it's really good from like getting perfect items, and therefore loose streaking is extra good. Or for Sorcerer, might be worth slamming something like a JG, just going Sorcerer if you have a good opener. You can win mid game as well, and then you get like to stage 4 with a lot of HP. Just get your board going level 8, and like as long as you have decent items, it's gonna be fine. And also but like it's not as good as Scrap if you're loose streaking, because you're like, even if you hit everything level 8 and you have like giga good items, you're not gonna stabilize that hard. Like there are matchups where you just lose. I would say a reason for this is that sorcerers like they don't really have that much tankiness. So compositions that get to your black line easily, or like have a lot of damage against it, or don't get killed by sorcerers that quickly, um, they have a really good time against sorcerers. So it's about like which comps exist in the meta and in the set, and also just how the units work with items and how item dependent they are. But yeah, it's important to understand mostly which comps require the good items and which don't, and take this into consideration when you slam items early. Then next, for Rebels, it's one of the few synergy vertical expansion compositions. There are 2 basic things to keep in mind when playing a vertical expansion composition. The first is that the low-cost units of the synergy overlap in the progression. Okay, so you need to think of the low-cost units. The second is that you want to draw 5-cost units. In a vertical composition, 5-cost units are often very, very strong. Caitlyn in Enforcer and Jinx in Rebel. Whether or not you can draw this unit, and this is true for basically every set. I mean, it's not a rule, but I feel like the dev team tries to do it so it's this way. Whether or not you can draw these units has a big impact on your ranking, so it's very important to win and keep your health to go level 9. The second is to have low-cost units upgraded. This is common, but low-ranked players tend to underestimate low-cost units. In Rebels, whether a rally or set are level up at the 4th stage has a big impact on the outcome of the round. That said, it's a shame that reroll to stack those units at level 8. It's a shame to reroll to stack or to level up those units. Okay, basically you want to have the low-cost units upgraded before stage 4, because you will be so much stronger leading into stage 4, then have more HP, and it's just like if you're level 8 and roll for them to start them, like often you won't hit them, and they're actually important when you're playing vertical. Yeah, therefore the condition for being able to play a vertical stretch composition in the first place is mostly whether the corresponding 1-cost frontliner stacked at the or leveled up at first stage. Aurelian Rebels and Steb in Enforcers. If you can win using these units, the vertical stretch composition is strong. Otherwise, it's basically trash. Don't do it. if you get the crest 2-3, you can. Yeah. I mean, if you get the crest and have a spot, you can maybe. But usually just if you get like the tank 2-star for one of these vertical comps, you can go for it. And I would say this is usually the case every set. Not always, but for the vast majority of verticals. There is a reason why a certain composition has that average ranking. That's strength of the composition. So if you misunderstand the strength of a composition, you won't be able to win, even if you understand the meta. The higher you go, the more accurately you need to understand those conditions. So compositions with high average rankings in rank range are completely different. If you just look at a composition in a flex zone, broadly categorizing it as AP composition, you won't be able to win. Don't just learn the conditions that are suitable for the composition from the composition guide and stop there. You will be able to think about why it is strong under those conditions and come up with a game plan. Yeah, I definitely agree with this. Basically, you just like it's not enough just knowing like the composition and like what the final board is or whatever, or the basic conditions. But if you want to get to the next level, it's really about knowing um, not only what units and items the conditions are, but also if you're gonna play from a win streak or lose streak and how item dependent they are. And yeah, something like with something like the vertical comps that you need like the upgrades early a lot more than in non-verticals. So stuff like that is really important, and I think it explains it pretty well here. Just with like 3 items, this this post explains it really well. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I for sure did. And if you did, go support him here with a tip in the description. And I'll see you next time. Peace.